Welcome back, Heath. How are you? Yeah, that's okay, mate. It's been a big weekend for you and I. Couple of DC nerds like we are. DC FanDome. We jumped under the FanDome for the weekend, and I tell you, it was big, to say the least. I don't think you and I have texted as much as we did yesterday across the last year. Not for a while. Nothing's got us this excited for some time. What did you think about the actual event itself? Walk me through your thoughts.
So I was very confused about what the hell it was going to be for so long because I saw things about it online. I was like, okay, whatever this thing is. Nothing was really clear to me of what it was going to be, which just made me not interested. But as the day got closer and you were texting me being like, oh, have you looked at the schedule, blah, blah. I was like, oh, I guess. And then it kind of clicked. I was like, I guess this is Comic-Con really. Normally the weekend of Comic-Con I'll be pretty closely looking at Twitter to see what's coming out. So yeah, it was a couple of days beforehand that I actually took an interest, and as I was looking through the panels, I was like, oh, okay, well there's something about the Flash here, there's something about Wonder Woman, there's something about a couple of new games, and there's something about the Batman. So I was like, oh, this will have some good
shaping
stuff.
up, yeah.
So then, yeah, in terms of the actual event itself, I think all live stream stuff is always kind of lame, and I'm yet to really see anything come out this year that's that interesting.
Yeah.
But in terms of the event, I think they did well to brand it very DC, and I think what came through from it a lot for me is DC has more of a kind of identity now, which they didn't really before, and I think that's good for them because Marvel have done so much over the last, I don't know how many years it is now, it's over 10, isn't it? To turn the Marvel brand into its own brand. But DC has never had that. It's just always been in the background, and a lot of people get confused of who's DC and who's Marvel.
Yeah.
And DC have also gone through that many logos in the last 10 years, and they've had a couple of reboots. They've been shambles, really. So I think, what came across is they've really kind of owned their brand, their look and feel, and the way the event ran with this kind of fake auditorium, floating space.
Did you like that?
Domes. Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, in terms,
I thought it was pretty cool.
It looked a bit tacky, bits of it, but I think in general, good concept and worked pretty well to have people talking next to each other, even though they're clearly green screened on both ends. It worked. It felt realistic, and it made you feel like you were watching a proper event. And I think the floating stadiums that they set it in just built on that kind of spectacle of it and made it feel quite awesome and grand. So yeah, I think they did well, and they did build it up to be this exclusive event that was going to be full of amazing surprises and stuff. And yeah, I think it lived up to that. So yeah,
I kind of thought, as you said about Comic-Con, it did very much feel like the closest thing we've had to Comic-Con this year. I mean, I know that they ran Comic-Con online maybe a month or so ago, but it certainly didn't seem to have the notoriety that this did coming out of it. There was no one really talking about it. And granted, I don't think Marvel had anything at Comic-Con this year. Obviously, DC withdrew because they're having their own thing. I think the difference, though, that I found this year was, as you said, every other year, I've got usually Facebook open. During Comic-Con week, Facebook's open because I know it's going to trickle through the news. This, for a change, felt like I could actually be part of it in this weird way. Now, I was cynical because that was sort of the premise. It's you get to be there. And I was like, oh, it's going to be tacky. It's going to be this, I'm going to be watching Zoom chats. It's going to suck. Yes, that's what it is. But I often feel like Comic-Con has this very exclusive thing, hey, if you can't be here, well, you're just going to have to wait until we let this footage that leaks, trailers. You end up spending 6 hours on that day watching fan-recorded ones that are inside the auditorium, which sucks. Whereas this, you got to be part of it. They brought you inside. And the best bit that I thought, I actually walked away after the event and I thought, I actually probably would have paid for that. I actually probably, to have that access, I would have paid, $10-20 if it meant I knew I was going to get, what was there roughly, 8 hours worth of stuff we could have watched before it became encores?
Yeah, I think it was about 8 hours. That's a really good point, actually, because normally you do get those shitty fan recordings come through, and then I'm like watching them being like, oh, like I just wish I was there and I could see it. So,
Mm.
right, I did feel like I was part of the event. Yeah, and I mean, I kind of actually hope they run it next year.
Yeah,
and
which
they
is crazy. I wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah, I mean, really, if you don't catch it during the event, you can just wait and it pops up immediately online.
Mm.
So
I think the
but I think
production
it's
was
fun
what
to like.
the production was
Say
what
again?
I liked the most was that.
Mhm.
You know, as you said, yeah, okay, if you're not at Comic-Con, those panels pop up and there's usually somebody's got their phone and they've filmed, you know, Jason Momoa saying something about whatever. And it's shaky cam and it's like you're kind of getting the audio's not running through the camera, obviously. It's somebody's phone and it's going through the PA system throughout this building. Whereas this, you actually were able to get, I don't know, I think you and I are the same in that we both like a nice and high production value. There's something about that where it's very pleasing to watch. Even, I mean, we'll get into it later, but they also changed the formats of some of the conversations that were had during it, whether it was, you know, they had Matt Reeves in the FanDome, like standing there talking to somebody. Some of the panels were done on what looked like a Zoom format. I just thought they did a good job to, I don't know, keep it visually appealing in a world where so many of us spend our 9 to 5 working days on a Zoom call just staring at that box shape. I thought they did well to dress it up, at least.
Yeah, no, they did. And
Jim Lee is a big credit to that by the sounds of it.
yeah, I know, design the whole thing.
Whole thing.
What was I about to say? No, it's just left my head. You can edit all this out, obviously.
Yeah. There's a...
what was I going to say? I had a really good point. It was going to knock your socks off, Daniel, and I can't remember what it was now.
I'll take your word for it. If you think about it, you can come back. By the way, I love the background. You always seem to situate yourself with Batman and Superman in the background. Very on brand. You're a man that is about brand, Heath, and I like that about you.
Oh, I remember what I was going to say.
Oh, okay. There you go. I managed to pad for that whole time. Great.
So I'll just leave a space for editing and...
I'm not editing shit. Go on.
So the thing I liked about this was being able to view from home, you could kind of make a big of a deal out of it as you wanted. So like I literally just laid here in bed on Sunday morning and was shooting in from my laptop. But I know there'd be people out there, if this became like an annual thing and it wasn't like COVID, you know, you could put this on your TV in your living room, you could watch it with friends and stuff. You could actually, you know, it's like watch parties for like TV shows and stuff. You could have this same thing with friends, and like it is more of a thing that you can enjoy because it's not just coming in dribs and drabs like you see on the internet. So I think that's one of the benefits of it that you don't get at a normal Comic-Con.
It's sort of that Super Bowl feeling where, you know, you could see that world where people have a party. Like, you know, you get together, hey, come over and we'll watch this happen together. You know that thing we've been waiting for? They're going to release it today. Come over, we'll make a bit of a day of it.
Totally.
I like that. I think there's something about it. You know, not everyone can afford to go to Comic-Con each year. I think this is a good way to bring everyone together. Maybe next year they do it and they have some sort of live interacting crowd. I don't know, but by then they can still stream it. There's no reason they can't be streaming this sort of a thing. But I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like Comic-Con itself needs to catch up and start doing something that...
Yeah.
Because like I would still love to go to the convention because like it would still be different to be there in person.
Yeah.
But I just feel like they should be doing something by now that's live streamed.
Well, it certainly feels like this. DC, Marvel, Disney. What did Disney do? D22 or what? They've got some con themselves that they do. It feels like Comic-Con are in that danger of starting to lose the big marquee acts that they have come to their Comic-Con. So I don't know. This just seems like another step in that direction of everybody that's got really famous IP going, hey, we could just host our own thing. We can control the narrative of our own stuff. Let's just do it that way. So I think this was a good step in that direction. And I got to tell you, some of the stuff we got, Heath, was freaking huge. I actually didn't expect it to be as big as it was.
Yeah, same here. I was blown away by some of the stuff they revealed, and yeah, like I guess because I wasn't looking forward to it that much before, and I really didn't have high expectations, which I think my lesson with DC over the years has been lower those expectations as far as you can, and then you'll always be surprised at how good the result is.
Well, it has been a little bit like that. It's sort of, you and I for the last couple of years get our hopes up about something DC related, get all excited, and then you're like, was that my fault? Was it my fault that my hopes were... Did I expect too much, or did they under-deliver? I don't know. So this, I was very much going in thinking, I'm going to be... This is just something nice to do in isolation. It's a nice distraction, nothing more. All right, let's jump into some of what we saw, because it certainly turned far bigger very quickly. Let's start with Wonder Woman, all right? Because I feel like out of everything, that's at the bottom of the list in terms of importance of what we saw yesterday. Would you agree? In terms of new stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree, but I feel like it's interesting to see online a lot of people were talking about that the most. Or some of the stuff I saw, I was like, oh, really? Like, we'd already seen some trailers. Like, we knew it was meant to come out in June. Like, so
yeah.
Past that point, it's now like a delayed release, and the trailer we got, I was like, oh yeah, more of the same. Like, got to see what Cheetah looked like for a bit, but
I just feel like I'm at a point with it where I don't really want to see any more of it. So I was kind of like, look, you've got my money. You don't need to sell me anymore. Whatever you're going to bring, that's fine. Like, I love Gal. I'm not that interested in sitting there listening to her and the director, Patty Jenkins, talk too much. Like, I could care less. You don't need to sell me on the movie. I feel like that's what a lot of these panels are, is trying to get you excited. But I'm like, look, as soon as the movie cinemas are open, I'm there to see it. So you've got my money. Did you watch the trailer in the end, just out of curiosity?
So did I. I did. I didn't watch the panel, but I watched the trailer. And yeah, it was good. Like, it's I know what the movie's going to be now. Like, I've seen the other trailer to like get a good picture in my mind of like, I get a bit of the storyline, I get the aesthetic of it. Like, it's very like loud and whimsical, which I think is, I've noticed DC have now really like picked who their characters are that are going to be the more serious ones and the ones that are going to be a bit like fun and whimsical. Then there's ones that sort of sit in between. I feel like she's kind of in between. Like, if we ever get another Man of Steel movie, I feel like that definitely sits more on the darker side still. And Wonder Woman's definitely like more lighthearted, and it works for her. Like, I know the fan base Wonder Woman is like, it's more women than it is men, I would assume, and she also seems to appeal to like a younger audience as well, which is nice. So like, it's all like nice, bright and colourful in this new film. And it's like, okay, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I think as I said before, all it did was just reiterate to me of, oh, that's right, I am really excited for this, and yeah, no, that's cool. I'm still excited. The cheetah stuff, that was cool. I was intrigued. I was the whole time with the cheetah character. I was wondering, especially when you've got somebody like a
Kristen
Wiig, are they gonna CG her up? Like, what? Like, how much are you going to cover her face and stuff? It's always an intriguing part when you've got a star that's playing somebody like that. To be honest, it was actually more literal of a cheetah than what I thought we might get. I thought they might go down that route of nods to a cheetah rather than an actual.
So the characters had a couple of different looks over the years, and the original, the one that most people refer to, is the one where she is a full cheetah.
Yeah.
But there's been different depictions over the years where she wears more like clothes, whatever. So I was glad to see that they've gone with the
comic accurate, traditional,
because it looks like she's going to be CG, like she'll probably wear a green screen suit, and they've like CG the whole thing.
Yeah.
But one thing I found interesting about Kristen Wiig up until this point is like the trailer we saw beforehand. I was like, oh, she seems quite dark and like menacing. She just seems like a pretty like, over the top, campy character. And especially in a Wonder Woman film, I was like, oh, she can't be that evil. So it was interesting to see, and it was like a pleasant surprise that she looks really dark and, like a good villain. So that was...
Well, when you cast Kristen Wiig, you kind of assume, I think, okay, there's going to be that quirky sort of zany element to this character, but it doesn't appear to be, at least to this point in the trailer from what we've seen. I just assumed there would be a bit more of a comedic element to that villain, but maybe not.
I was almost expecting like a Jim Carrey Riddler type of take on the villain, but it's not. So that's That's great.
Yeah, look, as I said, I'm excited to see it. All it did was just solidify that. It did remind me, oh yeah, we probably should have seen this by now, and oh, that's right, we live in a mildly depressing world, but that's why we're at the FanDome, and we're there to forget about it. So, moving on, the next one, I think you and I are in the same boat here. I didn't want to see this movie made when it was first announced. I thought, here we go. Another misfire from DC. This is stupid. Why would they do this? Black Adam.
Oh, right, okay. I was like, which one are we talking about now?
But Black Adam, granted, I don't know a heap about it. All I know is largely known best as a Shazam villain, maybe a bit of Superman in there too. And it was The Rock cast as Black Adam when this was all first announced. And I was like, okay, well, The Rock is the biggest action film star in the world, highest paid. He's loved by everybody. He plays lovable characters, and his brand isn't about being a bad guy, I don't think. Therefore, I was thinking, are they going to attempt to run this villain into some sort of anti-hero, sort of hero way? But apparently that is Black Adam. Apparently he is a bit of an anti-hero. Is that correct? Do you know?
Yeah, it is. It's interesting to say that about The Rock, because I hadn't actually thought about that. This is a pretty different character to what he would normally play.
Yeah.
But the Black Adam story that I'm familiar with is like he is one of the founding members of the JSA, which is set.
Did not know this. There you go.
Right.
It's already making more sense. Yep.
Right. So he's like, in terms of where he appears in like the timeline of DC, it's like a couple decades before Justice League. So this is like before Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman around. And the JSA is like the old school Green Lantern, and it's Black Adam, Dr. Fate, Starman. And these were around, like, they were written obviously at the same time that Batman, Superman comics were written in like the 30s and 40s. But as DC has like gone on, they've kind of set that period of the JSA to come before the JLA.
Yeah.
Which I think is good, because those characters, they feel like they're set in that time. They feel older, whereas like Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, and everyone else have kind of evolved with the times. So it's interesting to see that they're going to make essentially what's like a JSA film.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a backdoor JSA film. That's, to me, what it sounds like.
They confirmed that Hawkman, Dr. Fate, who I love, Adam Smasher, are all going to be in this Black Adam film. So that's interesting. I didn't know what to expect. I thought it was going to be more of a link to the Shazam film.
Yeah, so apparently not at all. So it seems that it took most of the internet the way it took you and I, as watching it kind of going, oh, you know what, this might be a good chance for me to make my morning coffee. Not overly invested, but still the audio is running in the background and you're making your coffee and you're like, hang on a second, I'll come back to this. This sounds okay. This sounds actually all right. I now suddenly want to see Black Adam. And granted, we've seen bugger all from it. We've seen a little bit of, what do you call it, like art design stuff from the film. But it's been enough to now whet my appetite to the point of, okay, I'm actually now, that's on the calendar. That's now on the calendar and I'm kind of intrigued for it. Again, DC starting to get wheels turning where I'm like, oh, I feel like we're getting some momentum again. I feel like there's some enthusiasm about some of these things. And again, it's not going to hurt having The Rock, the biggest film star in the world right now, sort of introducing this character who a lot of people have no prior knowledge of. So,
but I think that's what DC are kind of discovering they're good at doing, is creating an ensemble film with characters that aren't necessarily mainstream. And I mean, that's essentially what Marvel did years ago, when they started bringing in characters that no one knew about or cared about, like Ant-Man and, the Falcon.
Black Widow?
Black Widow, yeah. And like now they're like big characters in film and everyone knows them. So I think they're using Black Adam as another chance to like promise everyone a good ensemble of heroes in a film. Like if it was just solely Black Adam, don't know if you'd get that many people interested. Like people who like Shazam would probably go and see it because there's a link there. But the fact that they're promising like Hawkman, Dr. Fate, Adam Smasher, and they've cast Noah is it Centrino?
Don't have
As Adam.
that sort of like bizarre look on your face of like,
I don't
take
know
it or
his
leave it.
name.
Yeah, I feel like you're excited about that. You were like, hey,
Oh, no,
who is this?
He's such a hottie, but I just don't know how to say his name.
Yeah.
But he's like a big, like young heartthrob at the moment, right? So
Georgia loves him. Georgia loves him.
Exactly. Because he was in, I haven't actually seen any of his movies, but I just know his face. But
he's a Netflix guy. Big Netflix
yeah.
rom-coms. The Kissing Booth, was he in? Was he that guy?
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
Some crap like that. Anyway, not what this podcast is about. Yeah, I don't know. And also going hand in hand with that was the extra bonus news of Shazam 2 definitely happening, which, I mean, no, that hadn't been confirmed before this weekend.
No, I hadn't. And I hadn't seen Shazam until last night.
Yeah, and you went and watched it, and fun fact, you actually didn't mind it.
I really enjoyed it. So I had been putting off watching it for so long because I had seen the trailers, and this was after the unpleasantness that was Suicide Squad, and I just knew that, well, I thought that DC had just thought, okay,
let's be Marvel.
We're just going to give the people what they want. We're going to give them this light-hearted crap, and it's going to be just like knee slapper jokes one after the other. And I hate when action movies are just like filled with forced comedy. So that's what turns me off the most.
Yeah.
And like, it's a movie about a kid who becomes a superhero. So I knew that there would be this like real light-hearted, child humor to it about how he learns these superpowers. I knew he'd eventually abuse them, and the plot was pretty
classic. Yeah.
But it was enjoyable.
It's enjoyable, and it's one of those ones where I think you do get swept up in the magic of it all. Like you do, I think it unlocks that little kid in you of, because I didn't know much about Shazam. I knew roughly the story, but there is always that little part in us that grew up with these superheroes that we were that kid that, imagine if you woke up and you were Batman, Shazam, Superman, whoever. It sort of plays to that. And I think even as an adult, I kind of watched it and I was like, oh, I had fun watching that. That was a good time. So yes, it is no The Batman. It's no Man of Steel, but that's not, you need to have that balance. And as you've said, and we're going to continue to go into more, with DC attempting not only so many different films, but this multiverse and sort of allowing all of these different iterations of characters and tones of films to exist all in under the one umbrella of DC, they're gonna have something for everyone, and I think that's important at this point.
Yeah, they've definitely found their groove with genre films, so they know what character is going to play best to what genre, and I think superheroes are really appealing to families and kids, like that's why I got into them when I was a kid. But then there's the people that have grown up like us who, have read the comics and they're so invested and they want the more mature adult stories being told. So, there's a place for both. And I think what I was really skeptical about at the beginning of this whole DCEU was you can't make extended universe and have the tone of films change from one to the other. It's not going to work.
I was the same. Yeah.
But it totally does work, and it needs to work because you need to appeal to different people. And I think the quality of Shazam is what surprised me, though. So I was okay with the fact that it was going to be more of a kids' film, but even then it wasn't super kiddish. There was some dark moments in it. It felt mature enough, and the comedy in it was actually funny.
It was good. It was actually funny, and to go back to your point about sort of family stuff, if I've got a kid one day, right? What does every adult want to do? They want to show their kid their interests, try and get them interested in the same shit, so then you have an excuse to continue.
Yeah, totally.
If you're a parent and you've got a kid, you can't introduce them straight away to The Dark Knight. You can't do that. It's Man of Steel. A lot of that is either going to be too dark, a bit scary, or just be lost.
It's so boring.
But what better way than grab a kid, say, hey, watch Shazam. Yeah. To a kid, can you imagine if we were young, if we were 10 or whatever, and you saw that movie for the first time, what do you reckon the chances would be that was your favourite movie?
Oh, 100% that would be.
I mean, this is coming from two guys who, when they were a kid, loved Batman and Robin. Movie, the bad movie.
All the time.
I loved it.
Non-stop. Yeah, that was just amazing as a child. And now the special effects and everything is so much better that to watch, and they're just really well made films. Like obviously because things have progressed and they have the budget to make such good quality films. Yeah, I would just love that as a kid. So
yeah. So I think, I'm glad you're on board with Shazam. I too am. And Black Adam, we'll see what happens with it. But stay tuned because we think it could be a winner. Now, I'm going to just divert from the films for a second. And I'll defer this largely to you because it's more in your realm of expertise. Let's talk a bit of gaming because 2 huge trailers dropped. And you know me. I'm the guy that you message and go, have you seen the new Batman game? And I go, yeah, I want to get it. And you go, yeah, but you'll play it for 10 minutes and then you'll be over it. Yeah, true. But you actually play these games. Now, Gotham Knights, the new Batman game, and Suicide Squad. Talk to me. What are your thoughts?
Oh my God, this is possibly it's up there with possibly the best news along with the Batman, really. But I think Gotham Knights is something I didn't know was going to happen. So to wake up and find out there's this new game where you can play as the Bat family, I couldn't believe it because I have always said I would just love a game where you can play as the other characters. In Arkham Knight, you can play as the whole Bat family in like battle modes and stuff.
Yep.
Which is fun. Like, you get to use a different like weapons.
It's not part of the story though. We need it. We need the story.
Exactly, and like that's what I love about games is the campaign mode in games these days. The story writing is incredible, and it's like a completely different way of storytelling because it's not just sitting back and watching. You're actually interacting with it, and you're experiencing the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I think gaming is just something that more people need to get into, and it's an industry that is getting bigger. So it's amazing to see that more resources being poured into it, and like a big release like this is now getting more attention because the gaming industry makes so much money. It is insane. So yeah, it makes sense for them to release these big flagship games.
Well, I talk to people about games that they're really into and stuff, and the biggest comment I get back is it's like a 10-hour movie. It's like an 18-hour movie. And I get that, especially after seeing these trailers. Like, yes, we see a lot of good gaming trailers. I think it was my sister said to me, did you see the Suicide Squad trailer? And then she messaged me back straight away saying, oh, wait, it's a game. I didn't realize. I was watching the first couple minutes and thought it was an actual movie trailer. And I was like,
yeah.
That says a lot about this, about the effects that we do deal with now. And it plays to that point of it's like playing a movie for 18 hours instead of watching one for 2. So what's not to like about that?
Exactly. Like I just played The Last of Us Part 2 a few weeks ago. And the playtime on that is 30 hours, like roughly 30 hours. And by the end of it, you are just so invested in these characters. And like you have walked every mile in those people's shoes that by the end of it, like you are carrying all that emotional baggage with you. It is not like a 2-hour flick where you just like, you get the gist of it and there's a nice happy ending all within 2 hours. Like it is, you're far more invested in it.
Yeah, it seems like games do have the ability to, along the lines of when you watch like an Oscar winner, like when you've watched a movie which is really, it's going to stand the test of time. It seems like a game, because you play it for so long, you do invest in it more where, if you watch a 2-hour movie, you finish it, you go, that was good. What should I watch now? Maybe I'll put on an episode of something and you just transition straight away. Whereas games have that ability to make you almost put that remote down and go, whoa, I need a day. I might need a week to just digest and assess where my life is now. So you don't get that a lot anymore. And it sounds like gaming is more and more where you are going to get that. So,
totally.
But just on the 2 games, I think we should touch on one, Gotham Knights, the end, the Court of Owls make their first appearance in a game, I believe. Is that the first time they've shown up?
It is, yeah. Well, Court of Owls isn't that old, really.
New 52.
New 52, which is about 10 years ago now, which scares me because I feel like that was like not that long ago.
Fun fact, the first comic book I ever read because of this guy right here said, hey, you love Batman. Read the comics. I swear you'll like it. Read this. It's Batman. It's the start of the New 52. They've reset the whole comic universe because I was always like, how do you know where to jump in? Here you go. Yeah. Read this. read it. My first ever comic book villain against Batman was the Court of Owls. Still to this day, hands down, the best comic I've read, where I was sucked in straight away. I couldn't believe what I was reading. It's amazing. And them as villains and the way they exist within Gotham and their control over Gotham after all these years, I think it's a great narrative for a game, I would imagine, to be able to explore that in depth.
So what I find interesting is that they've chosen them to be a villain in this, but Gotham Knights centers around the idea that Batman is dead. So I've read conflicting stuff online that Gotham Knights...
What have you read?
So I've read that it is a direct sequel to the Arkham franchise. And at the end of Arkham Knight, Bruce Wayne's identity is exposed, so he fakes his own death, but essentially like kills Bruce Wayne and gives up Batman. But then you kind of see this like bat figure at the end of it. So it alludes to the fact that he continues crime fighting, but he's just given up Bruce Wayne and he's just committing to Batman. So the Gotham Knights trailer starts with the Bat family are receiving this transmission that, you know, Bruce Wayne is dead because there has been an explosion at Wayne Manor and he is dead, and he's saying to them he is. So part of me just knows that by the end of the game,
he's not dead.
Dead. He'll turn up alive, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see that people are saying it's a sequel to Arkham Knight because Barbara can walk, whereas she's in the wheelchair in Arkham Knight as Oracle.
Yeah.
And also it says that Jim Gordon's dead in Gotham Knights when he's alive at the end of Arkham Knight. And Tim, who's Robin, is younger in Gotham Knights than he is in Arkham Knight. So there's like stuff that doesn't match up. I don't really care.
I think the biggest confusing part is that the blow up of Wayne Manor very much fell in line with the end of Arkham Knight, did it not? Is that not why people are drawing the link?
Well, that's exactly how it ends, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it blows up the cave and Wayne Manor. But yeah, so there's like things about whether or not it is going to be a sequel or not. Look, to be honest, I don't care. I'm glad, even if it is a sequel, it is meant to be a direct one, I'm glad they made those choices to have Barbara return as Batgirl and to make Tim a younger, more classic, like Tim Drake Robin. Like it looks exactly like I wanted. So I'm glad they didn't feel constricted to what they'd set up in the Arkham franchise, because this is a different game studio doing it anyway. It's Warner Brothers Games Montreal, who did Arkham Origins, but not the actual 3, which is Rocksteady. So I'm glad that they've done this. And it looks exactly like the game I've wanted for years. I think even a week ago I said to you, all I ever want in a game is the Bat Family game. Yeah. Because I want to play as Nightwing, Robin, Batgirl, and like Red Hood. Amazing. Like typically, you know, Red Hood isn't still associated that closely with the Bat Family, but I'm glad that they've picked him for this. And the trailer's amazing. The gameplay looks sick. It's going to be amazing.
Well, I don't know if you said this to me or somebody else, but I do find it, one, interesting that DC is bringing out 2 team-up games, essentially. Like, they're both multi-character games. And correct me if I'm wrong, you might not have said this, but somebody said to me, I'm confused how they're going to do Suicide Squad because they've got so many characters in there. How are you going to play? Like, what's the gameplay like? But I would imagine it's similar to Gotham Knights. I imagine they'll both have similar structure in terms of who you're playing at what time, maybe?
So they went into detail about this in DC FanDome. So all those answers I have for you.
Great. I'm glad you listened to this panel because I didn't.
So in Gotham Knights, you play the whole thing. You can play the whole thing solo, and then your buddy, there's always a second hero with you, and that can be a computer or it can be a mate. So it can be 2 people playing at once, or it can just be you. And I'm pretty sure you will have the option to pick which hero you want to play as. So you could level up Nightwing like to the max and just place him throughout the whole thing. Or you can do what I'm going to do and cycle through the 4 of them. Yeah. And it's the same thing with Suicide Squad. So you can play the whole thing solo. You get to pick which of the 4 heroes you want to be, and the other 3 are just controlled by computers. But then you can have your mates join in for up to 4 people playing at once.
So it's interesting, right? What this sounds like to me and I don't know if there's any intention or not. I don't know if they've picked it up from the comics and gone, that's not a bad idea. You know when, and this is where comic books get confusing. You know when you're reading a Superman story, right? And there's what do they call it when there's another comic which runs side by side, which you could, it says, for more on this, get The Flash issue 133 or something. And you're like, oh, okay, so if I get that, I can continue the story, or I can just keep going in this line here with Superman, and I'll still get the whole story, but if I want more, I can jump over there. And it kind of feels a little bit like that to me.
Yeah, so comic books have those tie-ins like that because there is just so much happening at once, and they are meant to kind of run like concurrently, like you said, like side by side. So there's a big event on, like Dark Knight Metal, then you can read the main Dark Knight Metal comic, but then everything DC's putting out at the time is going to be affected by that main event. So you can dip in and out, because the way that these comics are released is month by month, right? So you get chapter 2 of Dark Knight Metal, but then you have to wait another month for the next one. So in the meantime, you can read all these other comics that are coming out.
Yeah, it's a good way to sell at the same time.
Totally. Yeah, but I think the reason they've chosen this gameplay is it speaks to the way that games are being played now, which is everyone is becoming more of a group thing. It's less of I need to sit in my room by myself and nobody disturb me. It's a real social thing of I want to get online with my mates and play it together, which I think is great because I always prefer that. A sort of game like that is always better to play with friends. It's so much more enjoyable.
I think, to be honest, being me, somebody like myself that isn't that inclined to sit there for 10 hours by myself playing, there is far more of a draw if you, myself, and Dane, who's sometimes on the show, are like, hey, let's all buy the new Suicide Squad game and we'll play it together. And you sort of fumbling your way through, and experiencing this story at the same time. You got your little headset on. I don't know, there is something that is a little bit more appealing about that. So not a bad point, Heath. Not a bad point.
Well, podcast idea, when a PS5 comes out, you, me, and Dane, we all play it, we record it, make me an episode.
I like that because the only issue is I'm an absolute goober when it comes to PlayStation. So you reckon you just reloaded, what was it? The other night. And you're like, oh, I've forgotten all the controls. I'm like, man, I was never good at it. That's why I quit it. I was no good.
Well, you get muscle memory after a while, but it had been years. I was used to playing The Last of Us because it was the last game I played. So I'm pressing buttons that would normally do the same thing, and I'm like, oh, I didn't mean to throw that. Yeah.
What do you reckon? Let's dive into this. A quick little sidebar. Let's quickly talk about, while we're talking about multiverses and stuff, the Flash film. All right. So there was a little bit that came out at FanDome, but there was also a bit during the week that came out that we should probably address on the podcast. Let's talk quickly about the Flash movie, which finally seems to be moving forward for the first time in years. This thing's been in development for at least 2 years, lost multiple directors. There was all this talk of they're doing Flashpoint. It's going to be great. The Flash is now going to establish the DC multiverse to make it understandable for everybody that doesn't quite get, why is there multiple Batman? Why is there multiple Jokers? And now it's official. There is officially going to be a multiverse in DC films, and it's going to be established through The Flash. In doing so, we'll be bringing back, let's start with Michael Keaton as Batman. Pretty big.
Big news. Huge news.
It's huge.
Tim Burton's Batman, that started everything. That started the whole comic book genre. That was the first film to really do it well. It started all the DC films, and it's just started the whole genre, really. And it's incredible to think that after so many years, that is now going to be brought back into,
the bat suit. He's actually going to be wearing the suit, which just blows my mind. I thought maybe, you know what? Maybe I'll bring back as an old man Bruce Wayne. No, he is coming back and will wear the suit, which is humongous, I thought. But there was a couple of really interesting details that were revealed over the weekend. One of which being the new suit for the Flash film will be given to the Flash by Michael Keaton's Batman. So that is where that will all tie in, is he is almost going to help in the Flash sort of crossing time streams, I assume. I don't know what's happening, but it's all sounding very cool very quickly.
I love it. I think the idea of Bruce giving him the new suit is incredible, and I don't know yet if so Ben Affleck's also coming back to play Batman.
Huge news as well. Yeah,
also huge. Like, because I never thought he would ever come back for a film.
I never thought he'd mention the word Batman again, but he has. Yeah.
Not after the sad Fleck clip, no.
Oh, God. And mind you, just quickly, you and I both love Ben Affleck as Batman. So I was really excited about this. And the fact of hearing his condition of returning was to have say on the script and a couple of points he wanted changed gives me a lot of faith that, okay, this movie must be really good for him to go, all right, I'm going to tuck my tail between my legs. I'm going to come back here because, you know what, I actually feel like it might be worth it. Even if it's just something as simple as him being able to sit back and go, this is cinematic history here. I've got the chance to be the Batman that is on screen with another Batman being Michael Keaton, who is largely considered by a lot of people the best Batman. But it's going to be the first time ever. 2 Batmen on screen at the same time from different eras. Regardless of why he came back, there's so much for us to speculate.
But so if Keaton is coming back, I would imagine that so Barry obviously starts in the timeline with Affleck's Batman because we've seen them together in film. So he starts there. He must then use the Speed Force to change over to a different timeline, which would be Tim Burton and Keaton's Batman. And so once he's there, I'm wondering, like, you know, what is the plot point going to be? Does he need the new suit to get back, or is it just, I don't know. It's interesting to know that. I don't know what's going to happen.
That's the best bit and you could almost argue the worst bit too, because between now and the time this movie comes out, you and I are going to have a very coherent storyline in our heads of what we want to see on the screen. And then I just hope we don't get disappointed like we did with Batman v Superman when it's not the movie we thought we Nah, look, I think at the end of the day, this film feels like it's so outside of the usual scope of what these movies are that I'm going to struggle to even contemplate what I think it's going to be. As soon as there's time travel involved, it becomes too impressive for me, like Tenet, right? So I sit there and look at Tenet and I go, I don't even know what that movie's going to be about. I'm just going to go in and just try and absorb it. I think I'm going to approach The Flash the same in that, yes, I get what Barry Allen is. I've watched the TV show. I know the whole premise, but I have no idea how they're going to bring 2 Batmen together on screen. Like that is... I can't even wrap my head around it. So I would pay so much money to see that movie. Like they can charge me whatever they want for that because I'm in the bag for it for sure.
Well, I think what they will likely do is just explain the concept of the multiverse, and they'll have to do it really clearly. And there's like a map of the multiverse that DC uses all the time now. And I think if they use something like that, it just becomes really easy because you'll be able to say like, okay, well, that's the Michael Keaton film there. Yeah, that was George Clooney, that one probably, and like this is the one we're in now with like Man of Steel and Justice League, all in that. So,
and I think people are used to that at this point. It's sort of, you look at Marvel again, not to always compare with Marvel, but Marvel is at a point with their films where there's so many of them that there are timelines that you can Google and say, okay, the official Marvel timeline. Oh, so Captain Marvel was first. Okay, so I see. Even though that was the most recent movie, because the thing is, there are a lot of people that aren't informed out there that they can't wrap their head around if I say that was set first. They're like, nah, it came out, that's the most recent one. Yeah, no, I get that, but that actually came first. So I don't think it's DC asking too much of a fan base at all.
No, I think Star Wars probably did that first.
That's also true.
The mainstream thing by bringing out the prequels and then having a set of sequels after that. So, yeah, I think people should be able to buy into it, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we're getting up to the meaty end, all right? And we're trying to keep this as succinct as possible because you and I can talk for far too long about it. Let's dive into what we saw, and it was a little bit more limited compared to other things, but from the Suicide Squad. Interesting, not Suicide Squad 2, the Suicide Squad. That's the difference in this one. What do you think about James Gunn's The Suicide Squad from what we saw at FanDome?
Well, I do wonder if they're choosing to call it The Suicide Squad so that people will just forget that this is a sequel. They're just...
Certainly feels like it.
it's like a soft reboot. It's a sequel, but it's sort of a reboot.
Yeah.
Because the last one was so awful.
It wasn't that bad, but it's forgettable. It's very forgettable. And you do feel like this one's going to be... Well, that's the interesting part about this is definitely set before the last movie. They're saying this is set...
I didn't know that.
Well, they're saying this is... I don't know if they're saying it's set in the 70s or it's based on... It's sort of like taking inspiration from 70s-based war films. So I don't know if it's meant to be a period piece similar to a Wonder Woman was, but I think...
Harley's in it, though.
Yeah, see, I don't know how it works then. And I guess they've already established Harley as existing in the same universe as Batfleck. So, yeah, I don't know.
I would assume that they're taking cues from those sort of genre films.
Probably.
Which I got from that little snippet they showed you. It wasn't a trailer. It was more of a behind-the-scenes kind of making of.
Which I really liked.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, it just made me think, like, God, I wish I worked in movies. Like, that would just be such a fun gig.
And wasn't it just a massive fanboy session of James Gunn? Everyone, the biggest selling point of that video was James Gunn's here. This is a James Gunn movie. You know James Gunn, right, from Guardians of the Galaxy? Yeah. This is James Gunn. James Gunn's doing so. It just felt like, oh, wow, okay, we get it. We've got a good filmmaker. Like, we've got a successful film. When I say a good filmmaker, I mean a successful at the box office filmmaker.
No, I mean, I found it surprising that that's what the video was. It felt a bit too on the nose that they were like, yeah, the last guy sucked and that was a mess. But don't worry, we brought in a new guy and he's great around set. He like walks into a room and changes the vibe. It was a bit weird, to be honest. But
it was a bit of a fan. It felt like a bit of fandom for James Gunn. Really, it was just a bit of It was very much trying to. It felt like a reset, a very hard reset, and a reminder that hey, it's not the same person that made the first one making this one. This is different. What do you think of the cast though? The cast was extensive and piqued my interest, even though I knew so little of them. So little.
So interesting that the cast is so big, because I felt like one of the downfalls of the first Suicide Squad was they had this ragtag group of people, but there was too many characters for them to manage, and there was just no character development with any of them. Like Slipknot was like advertised as one of the team, and he dies within like 2 seconds of the film, which I thought was great. I thought that was important in the film to show that. But it was weird that he was advertised as like part of the whole team. So I was surprised by how many people are on the team, and I was surprised with some of the names they got. Like, really impressive that there's like John Cena. God, you're gonna know them better than like you'll be able to reel them
so
off.
Margot Robbie, obviously, I've got it up here so we can flick through it because as you said, I don't know how many of the names were known beforehand. Now, what's his name? The director of Thor, he's also going to be in it as a character. So Joel Kinnaman's back. Idris Elba.
Idris Elba, that's what I'm trying to think of. Like that's cute. He's
humongous.
Big.
But like Bloodsport. Do you know Bloodsport? I don't know Bloodsport.
Well, what's interesting about Suicide Squad is that they are bringing out all these characters who like are really lesser known characters in the DC universe. So it's interesting that they're thinking, you know what, that character's, shtick is interesting enough that we can blow it up for a film. But it would never be a Polka Dot Man film. But hey, he's a pretty ridiculous character. Let's bring him into Suicide Squad and he can be one of them.
And I think that's what I like about James Gunn, to be honest, is his ability and fearlessness to use characters which are so unknown, probably largely because they're considered a joke, take them and make something with them. I think I like that. I like when my expectations are so low because I'm like, I don't give a shit. And then I walk away from it going, you know what, I might pick up a comic. I don't know. Why not? Like, I actually kind of like them. Suddenly you're buying a pop vinyl. It's like, what's happened to me? I don't know at what point this happened. But what was what's the ferret, like, rat-looking thing? What was that?
Ratcatcher?
No, Weasel.
Ratcatcher's also one of them.
Yeah, sorry, Ratcatcher is one of them. But Weasel, played by Sean Gunn, it's a weasel. It's that, like, ratty-looking thing.
Right, I don't remember that.
Oh, yeah. So that looks almost like his answer to Rocket in the world of DC. Like, it's going to be this animated sort of thing. Look, yeah, as you said, Cena as Peacemaker, and the way Cena in the video sets up Peacemaker as he's essentially Captain America, but way more douchey. It's like, okay, great. Yeah, he got me in the bag, similar to The Boys on Amazon, where you're like, he's essentially Superman, but he's evil and he's a fucking asshole of a thing. You're like, okay, that's different. Yeah, I'll watch that for sure. It gives you that reference point. Sorry?
Like, that's John Cena's brand, to like play douchey characters, like, and he can do it really well.
He can do it really well. It seems to be what he's played in films to this point, and he's got a very good ability to poke fun at himself, which you saw in Trainwreck with Amy Schumer. Really, like, he looks like the All-American and then has the ability to make you still not see him as this jock over here. Like, why do I care about him? Very likable in his way of pointing and poking fun at himself. So, yeah, I don't know. Suicide Squad, I was always going to give another go. Even after the first one, where I'm like, I don't ever watch the first one. I think I said this to you about Justice League. I walked out of Justice League. I was like, it was all right, but it's forgettable. And I never want to just go, I'm going to sit down and watch this. I was always going to give Suicide Squad another go, especially when I found out how James Gunn is such a fan of the comics. He went into this whole thing about the Ostrander run. Is it Ostrander? Is that the... I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce his name, but I've read a couple of those comics from, I think they were the 70s or 80s. Anytime there's a filmmaker that is passionate about it like that, I'm in. I'll give it a go because obviously they're coming from a place of fandom, and I think that's important. All right, let's speed it up a little bit here. Let's get to the... What do you have? So there's like a appetizer, like an entree, and then a main course. Let's call this the entree of the whole night, the Snyder Cut trailer release, okay? This was, to me, Heath, the whole build-up to FanDome, this was, to me, thinking this is going to be their marquee, is Snyder's back, big trailer, get excited, it's coming. I was excited when I watched it. I was like, okay, this is what I expected. This is the movie. Is that what you felt when you saw it? You thought, okay, this feels right again.
It's an interesting trailer because I think I was almost expecting more of a story trailer.
Okay.
It was a teaser, which does actually make more sense because I've seen the movie.
Well, we know the story to a large degree, but I would also say, Heath, that a lot of the scenes that we saw, the little clips, certainly showed a different story. At least to a point.
They do, which I think is why a teaser works, because I've seen this movie. I know the storyline, like the rough storyline, that it's going to be somewhat similar, right? Like Darkseid trying to invade Earth.
Yeah. Like
bringing Superman back from the dead. The main thing is going to be hit along the storyline. So to do a teaser and just show you glimpses of scenes which you have no idea how they're going to connect with the story I did see.
Yes.
I think that's what's exciting, because it's like, oh my God, what have I missed out on? Like, what was the original vision that I never saw? Because like Cyborg with his dad like opening up the mother box, and Cyborg like not even a cyborg playing football. Barry saving Iris. Like, this is things that I remember reading about. I remember reading, like,
you and I were pretty deep into it. We were reading a lot of the leaked stuff, and it sounded like a totally different movie, which plays into the fact, and the other news that was released, that it's going to be 4 one-hour installments. So essentially, Heath, what this is telling me, right, and it baffles me, we got a 2-hour Justice League film on the dot. It was 2 hours on the dot, because that was the studio mandate. If you remember at that time, Whedon was told, get it 2 hours or less.
Yeah.
We got a 2-hour film. We're getting double that. So what the hell? If anything, I could see a world where we walk away from this and go, geez, you got to give it to Joss Whedon. He made an okay movie out of a 4-hour epic, somewhat watchable.
It's crazy to think that Snyder even wrote and like planned on a 4-hour film. Like, that is just so much. So I think releasing it in 1 hour installments across 4 weeks. Like, makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense for marketing reasons, but like, if the story is that long, like, I can see why the studio didn't want to put it out in cinemas because it's such a big commitment to ask of people. Like, even if people like a film, it is so hard to get them to sit down. Like, what was Endgame? 3 hours? Like, that was still
yeah. I think it was over 3. But to be honest, you're right. I look back on Endgame and I'm not in a rush to go back and watch it. I think I might have seen it twice, maybe, but it's too big. It becomes too big of an undertaking. If I feel like watching Justice League again, I approach it more, Snyder's Justice League, I approach it more like a miniseries where I'm like, you know what I wouldn't mind watching? Watchmen again. I might watch episode 1 tonight. And you can just... Because I hate starting a movie and not finishing it that same sitting. You can't. I hate it.
It's not even a thing I do.
It's not a thing.
I know Dane does that, which really weirds me out. But
well, it makes sense why he doesn't like movies. But anyway... I just think, 4 1-hour installments certainly sits right with me, especially when we're seeing a movie we have seen to some degree. I think it makes sense. I think there's no point trying to dust it off and put it up there as being the same thing again or something totally new. It's like, no, you've seen a bit of this, but here's everything else. So it makes sense to me, I think.
I am curious how because it's a different format, right? So we're moving from cinema film to miniseries. It is, and I know Dane brought this up last time, interesting to see how they will make it work in an episode structure. So like, it's going to have to end on some sort of a cliffhanger, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a typical, and a film does have 3 acts usually. So if it was a 3-part, you could almost see how they would split up as Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. So they haven't split up into 4, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think... it is a very good point where you're going to want to feel like you don't want to feel like they're just like when you're watching a TV show or a movie on TV and they go to an ad break and it feels jarring. You're like, oh, I wouldn't have put the ad there. That was a weird spot for it. You don't want it to feel like that. So I feel, but I don't think they would release it unless they had some sort of clear understanding of how that would work, especially when a bloke is being given, what was it? Was it 50 million or something?
I thought it was 30.
30 mil to go back and finish this film. A heap of money. And to do it his way, I don't imagine him compromising on that if it was going to not work. So, I don't know. I would just imagine... Again, I'm holding out hope.
I am just so happy we're getting it, though, because just from that trailer, those scenes that we saw, it's like, that looks like a Snyder film. The polish on that like, particular style of lighting and color and just like it's so grand and big and the trailer is in IMAX ratio as well, which he shot it on. So even that is incredible to see as well. So
I think the thing people have to remember with this is if for no other reason, let's say it comes out and we're like, yeah, it was all right. It was pretty good. I want to just see it because I couldn't go on forever knowing that it was out. Does it or does it not exist? I couldn't have that. And that's what we were going to forever have. There was going to be this tarred image over DC and their films of like, but there was the whole Snyder thing, remember? I think by them releasing this, it sort of just releases that stigma of everything that happened back then. It's acknowledging it. It's going, hey, it is there. Yes, this was a period in time. There's no longer that cloud over it. And I think that was important, at least for me as a fan. Now I feel like I can actually move on and things like The Flash that exist in that Snyder universe, I can now start embracing again. Instead of always sitting there when The Flash comes out or when Aquaman came out like it did last year and going, yeah, see, like Snyder had his hands on this. Like, surely his movie would have been good, wouldn't it? Like, it's always in there. I think you need this movie just to be able to move on.
Yeah, that's a really good point because I think a lot of the fans feel like DC did them wrong. So they like, oh, you did me wrong, man. Like, I hate you for this. Like, I'm not going to be able to forgive you. And that was so obvious afterwards.
Yeah.
Like, it just obvious online, and the studio must have been copying so much because they eventually
did it.
Like, came to terms with it and did this. It's pretty amazing that this has happened. For the fans, like DC FanDome is exactly that. They are saying, as a brand, we're all about servicing you as fans because, like, you keep us going. Or we want to give you what you want. We want to make great stories that you enjoy. So it's interesting for an event like FanDome to happen, and the very first FanDome, they are giving us the Snyder Cut. So I think it's a really smart business move because now they have, like I said, curry a lot of favor back with fans. And I think people will be able to go forward. And I feel exactly the same. It's like, oh, now I don't feel so bad about these movies. Like, even Shazam, watching that last night, I was like, oh, like I feel like there's no ugliness kind of attached to this now. It's
you can just embrace it for what it is. Wow.
Totally.
Just give me 1 sec, mate. I feel like I've just noticed an issue that I'm having here.
You have me recording this whole time?
No. I've been recording. It's just my GarageBand starting to stuff up. It's just lagging a bit, but it's all right. I'll keep an eye on it. I think it's okay at the moment. We're just going to go into the Batman anyway. But, all right, yeah, let's move over just quickly and finish on. You could argue the only thing that mattered at the end of the day yesterday, as big as everything was and as great. If they had stopped fandom at the end of Justice League, I would have gone, that was a really good event. That was really good. Time well spent.
Yep.
But then we got the Batman, and Matt Reeves came on and had what I actually thought was a really interesting talk about his take on Batman, where he's sort of coming from with his take on it, his inspiration, his background with the character as a kid growing up. This is a guy that's right into what he's doing. To a point where I was like, okay, there's actually a genuine fan making a Batman movie here. I feel like that's almost a change of pace.
It was a great talk he had, actually, which I wasn't expecting. And, you know, with the rest of the panels, I kind of have them on and just like, all right, just get to the thing already. But it was interesting for him to do such a long talk about why he wanted to make this film and make it different. And he referenced, making a Batman film that was almost like comic books meet Taxi Driver, French Connection, Chinatown, and like really interesting to hear him say that, given like 2 days prior I watched that mini documentary. It's like 15 minutes long.
Oh, you did too,
IGN put together. And in that, it's all about the Batman film that never was after Batman and Robin, which Frank Miller and Darren Aronofsky were going to make. And it sounded like an amazing film.
It was ahead of its time, that movie, I think, was the issue.
Way ahead of its time. And it's so interesting to have watched that mini documentary thing. And they talk about the same films, Taxi Driver, French Connection, like, and how they wanted that sort of type of genre for a Batman film. It never was. And then here you have, 20 years later, Matt Reeves saying the same thing. Like, this is a detective film, it is a mystery, and it's about, like, all the dark stuff that Bruce Wayne has to deal with. Which, you know, we've seen in the other films, like Nolan's films did it great, but this just
it's the like themes in the movie. The murder mystery that we're getting, I didn't expect. Like, yes, I knew there was going to be a detective element. I guess I expected a murder mystery, but the visual of it is what I think was the most stunning of it all, was the grittiness and the... I mean, a lot of people are leaning on the Nolan verse of it, which I don't know. I actually don't think is very fair to Matt Reeves. I think he's actually, by the look of the 25% of the film that he's actually completed that we got to see a bit of, this is very unique. This hasn't been seen in a film yet.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. I don't think it feels like a Nolan film at all. I mean, Nolan has his own very recognizable aesthetic and style, but I mean, I guess what are they comparing it to, really? There's like Tim Burton, which is like over the top gothic, which is fun. Then there's the Schumacher stuff. Then there's Nolan, and then there's Affleck's under Snyder, and that is very much a Batman that goes toe to toe with Superman.
Yeah. This feels...
That's got its own
If
style.
anything, if you were to draw a comparison to anything, and again, I'm just saying this loosely, but for those people that feel that need to draw comparisons to films, I think it's more in that line of Joker, which we saw earlier late last year. Jeez, it's been a year, I think, since Joker came out. In that it's very gritty. Like people throw gritty around a lot. Nah, this is very gritty. Very grounded in a world of. There's no sugarcoating of anything that we're seeing, but. Even the start where, let's get into it. Let's discuss the trailer that we both saw. The start where the logos, the Warner Brothers logo and the DC logo.
Love that.
And honestly, the first thing I thought when I saw it was, this reminds me of Joker. I feel like Joker did something like this with its logo at the start. It was in line with what was happening in the visual we're about to see. And in this Batman trailer, it's what we assume is Riddler getting duct tape and that sound of duct tape pulling off, that sort of ripping sound as the DC logo is coming towards you, moving back, Warner Brothers pops up. From that second, I think I had a smile on my face because I was let me set it up a little bit. I'm watching Matt Reeves talk and I'm thinking, yeah, this sounds great. And he says the bit about the 25% of the film that we've shot.
Blew my mind. I couldn't believe that's how little they filmed. Couldn't believe it,
but when he said it, we'd just seen the James Gunn trailer and I was like, oh, maybe we're going to get like a little taste of behind the scenes like that. This will probably be a bit average. Like I might be a bit disappointed here, whatever. I hope I don't hate it though. Like I hope I don't hate what I see. And then they go into it and I'm not kidding. I had this moment in my mind where I thought, oh, I'm actually nervous. I might not like this. I hope this is good. And then we got a 2-minute and 22-second trailer, which I'm still baffled by how amazing it was.
It was so good. And I have had so many people message me saying, hey, have you seen this trailer? I'm like, oh my God, don't get me started. Like, it was just so well put together from little things like you said, like the logos, like just from that first second you're hooked. But everything about it is just so much of the Batman film I've wanted. As much as I wanted to see Batman that's old and like angry and like has lost a Robin and like beat up Superman, I wanted to see that. But I always wanted a proper murder mystery. Like, he is the world's greatest detective and no film has really gone into that. Burton's kind of did. There was more of a mystery to it, and you would see him in the cave and he'd kind of analyze the evidence and everything. Nolan's was never like a mystery like that. There was always a main antagonist, and there was, you know, he had all the cool gadgets, and there was things about that.
Well, Bane's going to blow up Gotham Stadium. Okay, that's the difference. Bane's blowing up Gotham Stadium, whereas here, you know, I don't know, the Riddler's grand plan could very well be on a big scale, but the setup it's not as big. The scale, and it's just not as grand as what it has been in other films. Even Joker in The Dark Knight. I'm not shitting on any of those movies. I love them to death. But there's something, you got to see something different at a time. And especially when you've read comics like we have. Seriously, I'm struggling to even quite put together sentences, but I'm still baffled by what I saw, because yesterday when I watched that trailer, you know how, like, when you've seen, for instance, you saw the first Ben Affleck trailer as Batman, you're like, oh, God, I've got that Batman feel now. Oh, maybe I'll put on a Nolan film. Or you first saw the Nolan films, you're like, I want to go back, I'm going to watch Keaton again. This was the first one where I felt like no matter what I did, it wasn't going to scratch the itch that I had from this trailer. That this trailer gave me this feeling of, I want that. And my first response was, maybe I'll read a comic, because the comics are the only things at this point that have actually tackled a story like this, a Batman story that is so grounded and based in detective work and murder mystery. I'm like, that's the only place I've had that before. And now I'm so excited that we're going to be able to, instead of pick up a comic, at some point in the future, hit play on a Blu-ray where I get to watch this so many times. And yes, it's a trailer, whatever, I don't care. I'm convinced this will be a great movie at this point. I don't understand how you can have that trailer and it be bad from here. We did
Just
say
so much
this.
of what
We
it's
did say this
promising.
about Batman v Superman, and no, it wasn't bad, but it just wasn't that good in the end. But
Yeah,
you
it
get
was
my
still
point.
good.
You
It's
get
still a
my
great
point.
movie. But I just think what they're promising is, yeah, it's an actual Batman we haven't seen yet. Like you would think after all these different franchises, all these different actors who have played him, the franchise it's run dry. But they've looked at the core of what makes him a great character, and it's the great detective. And what I'm so excited to see is that this is a Batman who's in his second year.
Yeah.
So we're not getting an origin story, thank God, because yes, it's a great origin story, but everyone's seen it. You can show me one clip of those pearls coming off Martha's neck and in the alleyway. That's all I need to see. But I'm so happy that the Batsuit is so homemade because
Makes
it
total
is so early in
sense.
his
It
career.
should be that. It should be made like that.
Totally. And as much as I love Nolan's films, he owns this, multi-billion-dollar company and thinks, oh, I'm just going to take this suit, which was conveniently already made, and just stick a bat on it. And my whole, everything about me just feels polished and ready to go. It's perfect. But Pattinson's Batman looks so dodgy, which I think is great. He's put his thing together. I mean, Affleck's kind of had that. It was a couple of kind of tears over his suit. It looked like it'd been through the
But
wars.
there was a far bigger feel of he's at a point where he doesn't care what his suit looks like anymore. Whereas this Batman feels like he wants the suit to look good. He wants to feel intimidating. He wants he knows what he wants, but he hasn't quite worked out yet how to make it there. What's so exciting is this is apparently a definitive trilogy of films, at least, that we're getting from Matt Reeves. It has the ability to progress throughout. And that's what, when Matt Reeves first signed on, and I've spoken about this before, haven't seen his work on the Planet of the Apes trilogy. The progression of Caesar in those movies of a leader and then that goes on to speak English and all this sort of stuff. By the end, you get the finished piece that you've been craving so much. You just want to see this all-conquering thing. But if you don't have the depths of despair and the build before it, it doesn't make that payoff that much sweeter. So I think by the time we get to that third film, if we do get there, that perfect and polished Batman, maybe with a Robin, who knows at that point, that's going to be so rewarding to have been there from the start. And sort of, you feel like then you're part of this journey and the career of Batman, rather than jumping in and just jumping through time and jumping through all these different places. You feel like you've been there the whole ride. And I think that's going to be something different as well we haven't quite seen.
Totally. And something we haven't seen, which I've said to you already, this is my favorite part about it. Batman walking in a crime scene, assaulting on a case with Gordon, who's Jeffrey Wright, by the way. Can't wait for him to be Gordon.
Why hadn't that been done yet? I didn't realize how much I wanted to see that and wanted that Gordon. That looks amazing. Totally buyable.
Totally. But that is, to me, so many pages of comics. Batman walking around the police. They know he's there. They're a bit weirded out by him, but he's having conversations with Jim. And that shot in the trailer when he says, "Does this mean anything to you?" And you just see him walking over, and it's such a presence, that suit. And I just I
got goosebumps. You can't see it, but just talking about it, I've got goosebumps. It's like,
just everything about it.
But even the way they set that up, there's that scene just before that where somebody's following Gordon. You don't know it's Batman at that point. They're following Gordon through a corridor of cops to a crime scene, which you assume. You're like, what? Where are we? I'm not sure what's happening. And then you get that realization because you see Batman emerge. You go, oh, all those cops were looking so weirdly at the camera in that hallway because they were looking at him going, it's that Batman. It's year 2, man. So they're still getting accustomed to what this guy is, this vigilante. That I couldn't agree more with. The fight scene, we should touch on that. It's not even a fight. He just beats the shit out of somebody, some thug in the street. Was amazing. What was that?
I love all the cool gadgets he has. I love all the theatrics they do in the street, the fight choreography. great.
good.
But just the fact that he pummeled that guy like that just shows he is such a dark and twisted person. And the character of Batman is like feared by criminals on the street, and you see why. If that was the sort of person that is walking around the streets in a cape and he's beating the shit out of people, I would be terrified.
And I think it's funny because, not to go back to Snyder at all, but you do have to give some credit to him in terms of bringing that Batman to life, giving Batman that visual presence on screen of how badly they can beat up somebody. Hadn't been seen. We'd never really seen Batman put a beating on somebody. And it really reiterates that my two favorite Batman fight scenes on camera that I've seen, where I've felt like, yeah, that's how Batman should be seen fighting on screen, have been when he goes up against humans, not CG characters. It's been gangsters, thugs, Gotham criminals. That's where he's at his best, and I'm glad that it seems like we're now at a point where no matter what version of Batman we get from here on out, it's going to be done really well in terms of those action sequences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. What are your two favorites? I'm guessing one of them's the warehouse scene in Batman vs Superman.
Before this, what I saw in the trailer, that I'd never seen anything like. Like when that, I don't know if that was in the trailer or not, or maybe it was just in the film. When we first saw that in Batman v Superman, Affleck's Batman just comes up. That's probably my number one still. I haven't seen anything to top that. Shoots up through the bottom of this floor into a room full of thugs, puts this absolute beating on them. Is the best Batman thing I've ever seen on camera, I think, to this day. I've never seen anything better than it. I don't think I have. In terms of, Batman fighting crime, like with his fists, showing his skills, I don't think we've ever really seen his combat skills before. And that, to me, was the first time we saw it. Keaton, very much here and would punch like that. Yeah, there was not much. There wasn't great head movement or anything. There was nothing. Even you look at
And in the Nolan films, it was interesting that a lot of the fighting you didn't see, and it was like a purposeful choice, right? Because you get this feeling that, oh my God, there's like this creature and I can't see him, and he's beating all these people up, and I can see him in the middle of a crowd.
It's a very smart way.
It was
a smart way to film it, that sort of box fit, like having Batman coming at the camera, sort of looking like he's fighting, was the way they went with it. And that, I had no issue with that, but I actually love seeing the choreographed fights. It just makes it look that much more real, I think. But yeah, mate, there was just so much in this trailer. It's by far the best Batman-related trailer I've ever seen, for sure, I think, in my time. I think that's pretty safe to say. Riddler.
So a few other things
go on, hit me.
I just want to touch on. Something I've been waiting to see for so long, and they've finally done it, is the eye makeup.
Oh.
I don't know why. Like, in every film he's ever been in, clearly underneath the cowl he's wearing black eye makeup, right? Because that way you don't get these white eyelids inside the cowl. And then to see Patterson take it off, and he's got this like just dirty, like oily hair, and it's that close-up shot of his eyes, and they're so dark and murky. You just think this guy is twisted, and he just looks so.
He looks emotionally beaten. Yeah, he looks like. It's sort of, it has this way, this little like sort of nod to what it's been touched on a lot in the comics is he's not much better in some ways than his villains. Like there is a lot of correlation between the Joker and Batman. They're polar opposites in terms of what they stand for, but in terms of sanity, you could argue they're both almost as insane as each other. Like one dresses up as a bat and goes out and fights crime. The other one tries to just invoke havoc on a city. I think it plays to that. Like, as you said, that sort of look of him looking so incensed by what he's doing, the black eye makeup, the hair, like he's totally disheveled and he looks like he's a man on the edge. I can't wait to see that type of a Batman. And as you said, it's that different emotion. Yes, we got that from Batfleck, who was sort of run down, beat up from so many years of it. This is a Batman that's entered into this lifestyle choice, I guess you would call what Batman does, but struggling with the emotional toll that it takes on him of not only what it does to him, but not being able to stop somebody and learning how to work through that rather than just give up. And the Riddler, I think, is perfect for that. I think the Joker's great. We've seen it a million times, but the idea of somebody sending you these riddles, I don't think I've ever realized how much I think the Riddler is a great villain until this trailer. Like, I've always liked him, but it's so good.
He's so underrated. He's such a perfect villain for the Batman because, you know, he's playing psychological games and he's just as smart as Bruce, and he can set these mysteries up, and you know, Batman has to solve them. I just think it's not a physical thing. It's a battle of the wits, which I think is really interesting. And then one other thing I love in this trailer.
I know what you're going to say. I think you text me about it. Go on.
We don't hear him say anything, and then we hear him say one thing, which is someone says, "Who are you?" and he says, "I'm Vengeance," which I think is just the perfect line because Bale became synonymous with the Batman voice. Batman. Yeah. And everyone would like joke about it, and it just became like a thing that everyone knew that Nolan's or Bale's Batman had this like over the top voice, which he was obviously like, it was like this growl, and then we had Affleck's with like a vocoder, so it sounded different. Patterson sounds just like a normal voice. He sounds a bit darker, but for that line to have that twist on it, that this isn't just a Batman that's still about, you know, being a hero. He's about vengeance. It
was the one thing I think the most from that trailer, that when somebody, as you said, two guys like us who very much flaunt how much they love the character of Batman, get inundated with messages when something like this happens, and you get these messages, and it's the first thing that people have said to me after it was really good is, you know what, there was that part as well. I thought he was going to say I'm Batman, but he says I'm Vengeance, and I was like, that's not a bad spin. I'm sitting there like, hey, it's kind of a nod to the animated series because it's the whole Kevin Conroy sort of, I am the Knight, I am Vengeance, I'm Batman. Great saying. And
great saying.
Kevin Conroy makes absolute coin off just saying that these days, but I think even when a mainstream audience is kind of looking at it going, oh, I thought he was going to do that whole I'm Batman thing, but he said I'm Vengeance. And I was like, that's tough. That's a good sign when you're swerving people from those sort of Batman tropes. Like the things people come to expect with a Batman film at this point, being able to surprise them still. I got to admit, when he said I'm Vengeance, again, goosebumps. I was like, oh my goodness, this is...
My jaw was like,
this is just too good. What's going to happen next? What about Catwoman? By the way, you were pretty happy with what you saw, I believe.
So happy. So I was pleasantly surprised by Anne Hathaway's Catwoman, and I like the fact that her costuming in that, she wore this like, you know, kind of leathery kind of tech suit. She had like some high tech gear, which made sense for her to have in.
She had like the glasses that when she flicked up, they looked like cat ears.
Yeah, and then it was cute how like they turned from goggles and they just kind of lifted on her head, and of course, like that made the look of it cat ears.
I liked that.
I think she's never referred to as Catwoman.
No, it's always just Selena Kyle, I think.
Yeah, but she's a cat burglar, and you know it's cute with the ears and everything. I loved the costuming in this trailer. And to see Zoe Kravitz wearing just a balaclava, and you get a shot of her and it's got just her eyes, like a hole cut into the balaclava for her eyes. She just looks like a real, like, standard cat burglar. But then you get that behind the shoulder shot of her opening that safe. And there is like subtle shape of cat ears underneath the balaclava, which is probably the same thing. It's probably like whatever she's wearing underneath it is just causing those bumps. She's not like putting on cat ears. Love that because she's a cat burglar and she mildly resembles a cat. Genius. Like that's what I wanted. She's got the whip as well, which we haven't seen like properly done. So
and again, it gives you that option for it to progress throughout films. Like this is this is year 2 of Batman, which means it is early on in Selena Kyle as well. Like that is gonna develop over time. It's yet to be seen what the relationship will be with Bruce and Selena. Like, I think, do they have that face-off at one point in the trailer? There's so much that happens, I can't really remember, but they do.
Yeah. There's a scene when they're battling out.
Like it's, I mean, from the comics, you know that Selena and Bruce become similar to the Nolan film, actually. They sort of have that romantic link as well. So the other thing that we should touch on just quickly is the Colin Farrell appearance, which a lot of people missed at first. Yeah. I did. I saw it and I was like, that guy looks like a bit gross. Oh, that's the Penguin. That's Colin Farrell. Wait, what? And you go back and you're like, oh my God, the prosthetics and shit, the makeup, unrecognizable. And it's only a split second because I do now remember when COVID first happened, Colin Farrell was on, I think, Jimmy Kimmel or something, and he was like, yeah, I'm playing the Penguin. It's going to be great. I only got to film a week, though, because then production had to stop. Makes total sense that he had such a limited role in that trailer. But look.
Well, it's interesting because Reeves, before the trailer play, was talking about, what period is this film set and everything. And he says, it's such early days that, Catwoman isn't known as Catwoman yet. Oswald Cobblepot doesn't like to be called the Penguin. So it's interesting that the character as he appears is going to be like a mob boss. And, he won't be the notorious Penguin in this film. But like you said, over the course of 3 films, we'll probably progress and we'll get to see him develop.
Well, I think that's what it was always one thing. I'm not turning this into this is going to be better than Nolan or any of that shit. It's not. It's just different. But an issue I always had with the Nolan movies was Nolan's obvious reluctance to lean too much into the fantastical elements of the comic book world. Yep. So doing things like calling Selena Kyle the Catwoman, it would never have happened in a Nolan film. You would never have had the Penguin in a Nolan film. I think finding that balance between the two, and this trailer seems to give you that really grounded in the real world, but there is that comic book element to it. You can certainly look at it and it feels like a comic book movie more than what a Nolan film did. And it just gives me that reassurance that he's not going to steer away from that. He knows he's making a comic book film. Whereas if you said to Nolan, hey, I love that comic book movie, Batman, you made, he would go, 1, it was called The Dark Knight. 2, it was a film. You know what I mean? There's that little... That little nose turn up at the source material that I didn't like about it, but it feels like that is not going to be the case here after listening to Matt Reeves talk about not only the comics, but the 66 Batman series he loved as a kid, which I get, that was that generation. And I was concerned about that way back when he first mentioned it a couple months ago. I was like, oh, that makes me nervous. But seeing the little tips of the cap that he's made to that film through certain little element designs on the Batmobile, the cow in certain ways sort of represents the Adam West style, but it's very much not Adam West. I don't know. I like it a lot. I just thought he seems to be able to really mesh it all together well from what we've seen at this early point.
Yeah, I think you're right. It feels definitely like a comic book film in the way that it's the same. So it looks like the same sort of dark mystery that you get in Batman: A Long Halloween, which is a pretty old comic book, but it's got that dark feeling to it. The art of it is really dark, but there is, fantastical elements into it. And you read it and you buy into it, and you're like, okay, this is not just a real world film. There's bits of this which obviously play it up and they're fantastical, but that's what I want. It's that perfect balance, which I don't think they've been able to get yet. So yeah, I can't if it's going to be at least a year until we see it.
It's super depressing we've got to wait this long for it, but if anything was going to make me continually excited between now and then, it's going to be the trailer. I will continue to watch it so much. I think I can see it. Well, I've already watched it 3 times, and that's in 24 hours. It's going to be watched a lot more, and it's still being classed, Heath, as a teaser trailer. That's the most mind-blowing part. Okay, Snyder's was a teaser. This was not a teaser, but they're saying it is. So there's going to be plenty more trailers to come. All in all, mate, DC FanDome, we're there next year. We are there next year. If they're bringing this sort of content, we're there every year. Big tick from me.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it worked really well. And, there was even some, over the course of a big live stream event, like there was some bits which, there was a whole thing on, heroes in the community during COVID, which, it's a nice thing they're mentioning that. There was like a segment of like the Wonder Woman cast, like playing that card game Werewolf, which I played before. It was fun. Interesting to see them like go into things like that. So, they're letting fans really buy into like watching the dynamics of like the cast all interact. And and then you get these like really amazing reveals. And I think it just really worked. And I'm just so excited for the year ahead now. I feel like I'm actually excited for everything DC to come now, which I haven't been in a long time.
Well, it sort of made everyone feel part of something for the space of 24 hours. And at a time where a lot of people aren't feeling a part of much, probably is a fair thing to say. It was, I don't know, it felt like a real sense of community, especially with you, me, Dane, like those of us that have similar interests, even just being online, interacting with people about trailers and stuff. It gave people that sense of community again, which I probably haven't had a lot this year. And I, for that reason alone, think it was a big success and something people will continue to come back for. Well, mate, I appreciate it. I said to you,
anytime you want to talk Batman, you give me a bell and I'll pick up the phone.
You'll pick up the bat phone. I like that.
Yeah. My phone is called the bat phone. It's still called that. It has been for probably 10 years now.
Yeah, you only refer to it as that, though, I believe.
No, I know, as in like the name of it when I plug it into stuff.
Oh, that's cool. I had never thought of doing that. I might steal it for myself.
Got the back computer right here in front of me. Everything's something. I've had it like that for like 10 years. I've just never changed it.
The ultimate Batman fans, a couple of them here. Heath, thanks for jumping on, mate, talking all things DC FanDome.